let's shift to Luka's NBA team, the Mavericks, because they missed the playoffs last season. They did re-sign Kyrie Irving. They signed Grant Williams to a 4-year, $53 million deal. They brought back Seth Curry this summer. So, Chiney, when you're looking at the ceiling for Dallas, as we're talking about an incredibly tough Western Conference that arguably got even better over the summer, what do you think that ceiling is?
That ceiling is, I think, best case scenario, they put themselves in the mix, the Dallas Mavericks, for the top 4 in the West. And that's not saying that they can't win and they can't do it all. I think there were a lot of holes defensively that they're going to have to fill. And they have started doing that with those additions, especially Grant Williams, as you mentioned. Top 4 is not bad because, as you mentioned, the West is, I mean, didn't we used to like say
right, so we're talking about like the Suns, the Nuggets.
Yeah, exactly, the Nuggets defending champs, the Suns.
Right.
I mean, people even think the Lakers potentially could get right back there. People are sleeping potentially on the Kings and the Grizz, the Warriors. Did I say the Warriors? So it's not saying that being in the top 4 means, oh, they're not going to be a great team, but it just is that they're stacking up against teams that have improved. But I do think that duo has a chip on their shoulder. Luka knows it's time now. The reason why he's continuing to play in international competition is because he knows that that leads to his best version of basketball, where they cannot be out of the playoffs.
Right. There's accountability for him over the summer, knowing the shape that he needs to come into. I guess the question, Perk, is top 4. I absolutely agree with you when you start to list off those teams, Chiney. Is top 4 good enough when you're staring down a Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving team with the clock ticking on Luka?
You know what? They offer a second-round ceiling. I feel like they're a team that could make a lot of noise and get past the first round and get into the second round. But the thing about the Mavs is this, right? Luka hasn't even scratched the surface of his prime. Kyrie Irving is in his prime. My thing with the Mavs is that they want to continue to be eye candy, right? Like Luka and Kyrie should go approach this season 1. Every team is going to walk into training camp, especially when you have 2 bona fide superstars like the Mavs do, and talk about championships, aspirations, and rightfully so. But then all of a sudden you have to be real with themselves and say, do we have a championship roster?
Right.
And to be honest, the answer is no. So they don't. But they want to continue to build to be eye candy. Look at what the New York Knicks have done over the last few years. Adding Jalen Brunson, what they did in the postseason. Like, people want to play for the New York Knicks now because of the culture that they have built. And now with Luka and Kyrie, I think going to the second round will put the world on notice. And I know they have so many rules now with the CBA and, you know, players can't just move and it's hard to sign guys. But if you could continue to build, especially going into next season, maybe they could make a trade in February. But I got them as a second-round type team, like, far as their ceiling.
Hey, there's nothing wrong. We all appreciate a little eye candy from time to time. The question is, a team that went to the Western Conference Finals just a couple of years ago, if just being eye candy, I can't with you, too. We're going to talk about a Dallas great, Dirk Nowitzki. He spoke to reporters in a press conference ahead of his Hall of Fame induction to reflect on his career. Take a listen.
And it's, like I said, I just cannot believe that, first of all, it's 4 years already. I'm out of the league, and now the time has already come that I'm going in. And I think the whole weekend will be sort of surreal. And, you know, at some point, you know, I always got to kind of stop. I know the itinerary is packed every minute probably, and I just got to make sure sometimes I stop and reflect a little bit and really still enjoy what's going on. I mean, the whole thing will be unbelievable, going in with an incredible class, with people obviously that I've known and competed against for a long, long time. So I'm looking forward to it.
It's hard to believe it's only been 4 years, but Dirk Nowitzki, he's going to be immortalized among the greats in the Hall of Fame and his career cemented in that legacy. The champion, the league MVP, he revolutionized the game with his shooting ability as a 7-footer. Now, Dirk is 6th all-time in scoring. He played 21 seasons, all 21 of which were for the Dallas Mavericks. So, Perk, you've had some battles with Dirk. What was it like actually playing against him?
I wouldn't say battles because it was so one-sided. Dirk is the true definition of not running from the grind. He stayed in the grind. He carried the team for majority of his career, for like 80% of his career. When you talk about putting a franchise on his shoulders, I didn't watch Dirk give everybody that work. When you talk about turnarounds over both shoulders, the one-legged fadeaway, his mid-range game. And you know the thing that people don't talk about enough when it comes down to Dirk Nowitzki? It was his tenacity and him not backing down from anyone. Dirk was the type that would get in your face. He would play with this he would play with this energy that would just like rub off, and he wasn't afraid to talk noise. Like Dirk was a bona fide killer when it came down to being on the court in between those lines. And when he matched up against guys like Duncan, KG, Antoine Walker, he took it personal, and you could go back and look at the numbers, he showed it.
Absolutely. And you're talking about the one-legged fadeaway. When I close my eyes and think of Dirk, that's certainly the shot that I picture. But when you're talking about impact on the game, when you're talking about legacy, you're talking about him as a killer. And there were some whispers, there still are from time to time, our international players, do they have the same sort of tenacity that the American players do? What would you say his legacy, when you look at his impact on the game today, what would you say that is?
When you go and play overseas, like I have and like many in the basketball community have, you have respect for the international game, especially Europeans, because they play physical, they play tough. And so I feel like within the basketball community, we respect that. What I really love, the impact-wise, is the evolution of the game that he really promoted, meaning being that stretch big, knocking down face-up shots, pick and popping. That was not necessarily like the reputation that bigs had back then. I grew up in Cypress, Texas, watching the Rockets, watching the Spurs, watching the Mavs, and unfortunately, it was more so watching the teams outside of my hometown based on our successes. But idolizing him as a young player, learning the game myself, a post player, saying like, oh, I don't have to just sit under the basket. I don't have to just, only outside shot be my free throw. What he was able to do with his game inspired a generation to do the same thing. And it was not just within the confines of Texas, it's global. 153 international games played under the banner of Germany. We all saw how that impacted the global sphere of basketball.
Absolutely. I mean, when you have that type of size, the fact that he could elevate and shoot over anyone, what he was able to do, his impact on the game.
The statue.
Yep. The statue. The three-time NBA champion and the 2006 Finals MVP set to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this Saturday. Wade was a 13-time All-Star. He was named to 8 All-NBA and 3 All-Defensive teams as well. Wade was the leading scorer for Team USA's Redeem Team at the 2008 Olympics, and he followed up that gold medal run by winning the NBA scoring title with a career-best 30.2 points per game in the 08-09 season, the most by any Heat player ever. Now, Heat president Pat Riley, this was interesting. He lauded Wade on a conference call with reporters yesterday, saying, quote, Dwyane is the greatest player who ever put on a uniform for us. LeBron James, he was here for 4 years. He gave us a tremendous lift. But over the body of work here in Miami, Dwyane is the greatest player who ever played for the Heat. That's not an insult to LeBron. That's because of his longevity and the short term that LeBron was here. So clearly, Riley knows how these comments could be taken, did everything he could to say, and caveat, just to make sure I understand it. But at the end of the day, George, how do you take this? Do you think this should be a slight for LeBron, or are we just good? We understood what Pat Riley was trying to say.
It's not a slight to LeBron.
Agreed.
Come on, let's be real here. Dwyane Wade is the most important, which makes him the greatest player in Miami Heat franchise history. Shaquille O'Neal chose to play with Dwyane Wade. The Lakers weren't going to trade him to the West, but they were going to trade him in the East. And he chose Dwyane Wade as his sidekick, knowing the greatness that was soon to follow from Dwyane Wade. Not only that, obviously LeBron James and Chris Bosh come to play with Dwyane Wade. Dwyane carries them to a championship. Those two guys eventually come a few years later. They chose to play with Dwyane Wade. Dwyane also didn't let ego get in the way when him and LeBron in 2010 were near the top of the league, right? You could make the case they were top 2, top 3 players. And Dwyane stepped aside and said, no, LeBron, this needs to be your team. The pecking order needs to be you and then the rest of us. If you're comfortable, you're good. So the fact that he did all that, the fact that he has the longevity, the fact that he got Jimmy Butler to Miami after his playing days, he is absolutely, undoubtedly the greatest player in Miami.
Where's Director Kathy when we need her?
I know, not to mention, Dwyane Wade said that he wants to be, Dwyane Wade said, Jimmy Butler said that he wants to end his career, right, with the Miami Heat, in large part because of what he saw from Dwyane Wade. So, Big Perk, you ran into those Dwyane Wade Heat teams a couple of times. What do you think about these comments from Pat Riley?
Oh, he was spot on. He was spot on. Look, I mean, when you talk about what he accomplished in the Heat uniform, no one could argue that. Dwyane Wade is the greatest Heat player to ever touch the basketball. It's what you did while you had on a Heat uniform. It's no slight to LeBron. It's the same thing when I said Russell Westbrook was the greatest Thunder ever in my eyes. It's because Kevin Durant had the opportunity to leave. He chose to leave, and he passed the torch to Russ, and Russ embraced it with open arms. Won the MVP, triple-doubles back-to-back years. It's the same thing with Kyle Lowry in Toronto. I feel like he's the greatest Raptor of all time because what he accomplished in a Raptor uniform. So at the end of the day, Pat Riley didn't tell no lie. It was all honestly and it was real. And D-Wade will have a statue outside of that arena sometime in the near future. But can I say this too?
Please.
Can a lot of these people leave D-Wade alone? D-Wade doesn't bother anybody. Now, I've been seeing all these conversations about, Dwyane Wade and Paul Pierce. Or who would you take, Dwyane Wade or James Harden? Can we let Dwyane Wade just have his moment? He's inducted into the Hall of Fame. Dwyane Wade is the guy that always give people their flowers. Like, leave him the hell alone, please. Let that man live in peace.
Perk, I'm with you 100%. I'm with you on the statue at 601 Biscayne Boulevard. I'm a little disappointed they didn't do the George Jefferson Dwyane Wade move after he dunked on you in that B-roll they just showed there. They didn't do you totally dirty in that particular case,
see,
Perk.
George misses no beats. He doesn't come in for a couple of days, and he comes in like, I am back.
But the one thing I wanted to mention, 21,556 points, leads the Miami Heat in points. You cut that in half, he's still the points leader in Miami Heat franchise history.
And there is
bring the
nothing
fan back.
else to say. George, please do not go too far, especially if you're going to continue to roast Perk.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.